The sound of my own daughter calling me a loser through the kitchen window hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I stood there in my garage at 11 p.m., grease still under my fingernails from another 12-hour shift at the factory, listening to 16-year-old Judy tear me apart to her mother. "Mom, just take the furniture. Dad'll never fight back. He's a loser. Walter's a real man. He'll protect us. Nice to know your kid thinks you're a doormat. Guess I should have skipped those softball games and bought a damn cape instead." I'm Aaron Taylor, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty decent life. Married to Kayla for 18 years. Good job as a mechanical engineer at Henderson Auto Parts. Nice house that my mother Brenda technically still owned, but let us live in. Sure, Kayla had been distant lately, always talking about upgrading our lifestyle and making snide comments about my factory stink. But I figured that was just marriage stuff. Everyone goes through rough patches, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. The first crack in my perfect little world came when Kayla left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. The screen lit up with a text from W that made my blood run cold. "Can't wait to get you out of that dump with that pathetic husband of yours. My place has a king-size bed and a real man to go with it." I scrolled up. Months of messages, explicit photos, plans to clean out the loser and move in together. Walter Anderson, some hotshot sales manager she'd met at her real estate office, talking about my wife like she was a prize he'd already won. But the worst part? The messages where they mocked me. My factory stink, my boring stories, how I was too stupid to see what's right in front of him. Walter even joked about the security camera I'd installed after our neighbor Gordon's house got broken into, saying I was probably too dumb to check the footage anyway. And that's where he was wrong. I spent the next 2 days going through every hour of footage from the past month. There it was, clear as day, a budget moving truck pulling up to my house last Tuesday while I was at work. Walter directing two guys as they loaded up half my furniture, including the antique dresser that belonged to my grandmother. Kayla standing there with a clipboard, checking things off like she was running some kind of military operation. They were stealing from me, in broad daylight, in my own driveway. The rage that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. Not the quick anger that flares up and dies down, but something cold and calculating that settled in my chest like a chunk of ice. They thought I was too stupid, too weak, too pathetic to fight back. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. And I waited until the weekend, when I knew Walter would be showing off his precious 1987 Camaro at the car show downtown. The thing was his pride and joy, painted candy apple red with chrome everything. He'd posted about 50 pictures of it on social media, bragging about the 20 grand in modifications he'd put into it. I drove to his apartment complex with a pocket knife and a plan. Nothing too dramatic, just a small puncture in the rear tire, enough to cause a slow leak. As I crouched next to his car in the parking lot, I slipped a folded piece of paper under his windshield wiper. "You break it. You bought it. Oh, hun. I was walking back to my truck when I heard the camera click. Gordon, my nosy neighbor, was standing 20 feet away with his phone out, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Well, Aaron, guess you're not as clueless as everyone thinks." My stomach dropped. Gordon was the biggest gossip in our neighborhood. By tomorrow morning, half the town would know I'd been messing with Walter's car. "Gordon, this isn't what it looks like." "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like." He held up his phone, showing me the photo he'd just taken. "Question is, what's it worth to you to keep this between us?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Text from Kayla. "Nice try, Aaron. Next time, try growing a pair." That's when I knew Gordon had already sent her the photo. The ice in my chest spread, freezing everything in its path. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that I didn't play to lose. They want a villain? I'll burn the whole damn circus down. Oh, the whispers started Monday morning at the factory. I walked into the break room, and conversations died mid-sentence. Guys I'd worked with for 10 years suddenly found their coffee cups fascinating. The only one who had the guts to look me in the eye was Sharon Martinez from HR, and even she seemed uncomfortable. "Aaron, can I talk to you for a minute?" We stepped into the hallway, away from the staring faces and awkward silence. Sharon was one of the few people at Henderson who'd always treated me with respect. 40-something, divorced, no-nonsense attitude that I'd always appreciated. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you and Kayla, But people are talking. Word is she's telling everyone you've been difficult. Difficult how? Sharon shifted uncomfortably. Controlling. Aggressive. She's painting a picture that doesn't match the guy I've worked with for 8 years. But you know how this town is. Gossip spreads faster than the flu. Apparently, my only job now is paying bills and holding doors for the new king. The worst part was Judy. My own daughter wouldn't even look at me when I picked her up from school. She sat in the passenger seat of my truck, earbuds in, scrolling through TikTok like I didn't exist. When we got home, she went straight to her room and slammed the door. I tried to talk to her through the door. Judy, sweetheart, I know things are confusing right now, but just leave me alone, Dad. Mom told me everything. What exactly did Mom tell you? That you're having some kind of breakdown? That you're trying to sabotage her relationship with Walter because you're jealous? That you can't handle the fact that she's finally happy? Happy, right. Happy with a guy who was helping her steal furniture from the house where she raised our daughter. That night, I drove to Murphy's Tavern, the local dive bar, where factory workers went to forget their problems. I wasn't much of a drinker, but I needed to be somewhere that wasn't home, somewhere I could think without hearing Judy's music through the walls, or seeing the empty spaces where my grandmother's furniture used to be. I was 2 beers in when they walked in. Kayla looked different. Hair freshly done. New dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. Makeup applied like she was going to a photo shoot instead of a dive bar. Walter strutted in behind her, wearing a leather jacket that was trying way too hard to make him look tough. They took a booth across the room, but I could feel them watching me, whispering, probably planning their next move. I tried to ignore them, but Walter had other ideas. He sauntered over to my bar stool, that smug grin plastered across his face. Aaron Taylor. Heard you've been having some car trouble lately. Wouldn't know anything about that, Walter. Oh, I think you would. He leaned against the bar, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Expensive stuff, the kind that screams, look how successful I am. See, I've been hearing some interesting stories about you. How you can't handle your wife moving on. How you're so desperate you're vandalizing other people's property. The ice in my chest started spreading again. Careful, Walter. You're walking into territory you don't understand. Am I? He laughed, loud enough for the whole bar to hear. Because from where I'm standing, you look like a pathetic factory worker who can't accept that his wife traded up. That got the attention of everyone in Murphy's. Conversations stopped. Pool games paused. Even the bartender, old Murphy himself, turned to watch the show. Tell me, Walter, I said, standing up to face him. How's that military service treating you? Still telling people about your tours in Afghanistan? His face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Purple Heart recipient, right? Saw combat in Kandahar? Funny thing about stolen valor, Walter. It's real easy to check military records when you know the right people. I'd done my homework. Walter Anderson had never served a day in his life. But he'd been telling war stories to impress women for years. The look of panic in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. You're lying, he said, but his voice cracked. Am I? Should we call over some of the actual veterans in this bar and have you tell them about your service? I'm sure they'd love to hear your stories. Walter's hands clenched into fists. For a second, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. Instead, he grabbed his beer and dumped it over my head. The bar erupted in gasps and shouts. Beer dripped down my face, soaking my shirt, but I didn't move. I just smiled and reached for Walter's fresh beer, the one Murphy had just set down. Thanks for the shower, Walter. My turn. I dumped the entire bottle over his head, watching his carefully styled hair flatten against his skull. The expensive leather jacket darkened with beer stains that would never come out. The bar exploded in cheers and laughter. Someone started clapping. Another guy shouted, "About time someone put that asshole in his place." Walter stood there dripping, his face red with humiliation and rage. Kayla rushed over, screaming something about lawsuits and assault charges, but her voice was drowned out by the crowd. I leaned close to Walter's ear and whispered, "You want to play war games with me? I spent 18 years learning everything there is to know about you through my wife. You've got no idea what kind of ammunition I'm carrying." I walked out of Murphy's to a standing ovation, but the victory felt hollow, because I knew this was just the beginning. Kayla wouldn't let this slide, and Walter sure as hell wouldn't forgive the public humiliation. My phone buzzed as I got to my truck. Text from my lawyer, Ron Jeremy. Kayla filed for divorce this morning. She's asking for full custody, the house and alimony. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. They want war? Let's see how they like the trenches. Ron Jeremy's office smelled like cheap coffee and broken dreams. He was the kind of lawyer who advertised on bus benches and took payment plans, but he was also the meanest son of a bitch in family court. If you needed someone to fight dirty, Ron was your guy. She's going for the throat, Aaron. Full custody based on claims of emotional instability and aggressive behavior. She's got witnesses who'll testify that you've been stalking her new boyfriend, vandalizing his property, and making threats. What witnesses? Your neighbor Gordon, for starters. He's got photos of you messing with the car. Then there's the bar incident. She's spinning that as you assaulting Walter in public. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. And the furniture? The stuff she stole while I was at work? She claims she was moving her personal belongings to a safer location due to your increasingly erratic behavior. Says she was afraid of what you might do. What about the security footage? Ron leaned back in his chair, studying me. That's where things get interesting. Technically, she had a right to remove her personal property. But your grandmother's dresser, that antique cabinet, those weren't hers to take. So we can get them back? Maybe. But Aaron, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Are you planning to do anything stupid? Because if you are, I can't help you. If I can't have peace, I'll settle for scorched earth. Define stupid. Anything that involves violence, property destruction, or breaking the law. Because right now, we've got a fighting chance. You screw this up, and you'll lose everything. I spent the next 3 days planning. Not stupid planning, smart planning. The kind that required research, patience, and a thorough understanding of my enemy's weaknesses. First, I hit the banks. Cleaned out every joint account we had. Transferred the money to a new account in my name only. Perfectly legal. I was still her husband, and the money was as much mine as hers. I canceled her credit cards, removed her from my insurance policies, and changed every password on every account we shared. Then I did some digging into Walter's finances. Amazing what you can find with public records and a little creativity. Turns out Mr. Hotshot sales manager was living way beyond his means. The fancy apartment was month to month, because he couldn't qualify for a lease. The Camaro was financed at 22% interest through one of those predatory lenders that target people with bad credit. Even better, he owed back taxes and had 2 judgments against him from credit card companies. But the real gold mine was his employment history. 3 jobs in 5 years, all ending badly. Sexual harassment complaints, embezzlement accusations, and a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend who claimed he'd been stalking her. Walter Anderson wasn't a successful businessman. He was a con artist with a good suit and a silver tongue. The plan started coming together when I remembered something from Kayla's real estate files. She'd been working on a deal with a local car dealer, trying to help him relocate his lot. The dealer, Mike Kowalski, was an old friend from high school who'd built a successful business from nothing. I called Mike and set up a meeting. Aaron Taylor, Jesus, how long has it been? 10 years? Something like that. Listen, Mike, I need a favor. And before you ask, it's not illegal, but it might be a little unconventional. Mike's office was cluttered with car magazines and coffee-stained paperwork, but his eyes were sharp. He'd always been smart, even back in high school. Smart enough to see through bullshit, and clever enough to appreciate a good con when he saw one. I told him about Walter, about the affair, about the furniture theft. I showed him the financial records I'd dug up and the employment history I'd uncovered. So what do you need from me? A meeting. Tell Walter you're interested in buying some cars from him, maybe setting up a partnership. Get him down here tomorrow night, around 8. And then what? Then I'm going to have a conversation with him about the facts of life. Mike grinned. I always liked you, Aaron. You were too nice for your own good, but I always liked you. What else do you need? A distraction. Something that'll keep him busy while I make a few modifications to his car. What kind of modifications? I pulled out a small bag of sugar packets I'd taken from Murphy's Tavern. The kind that'll teach him not to mess with other people's property. Mike's grin got wider. You know, I think I'm going to enjoy this. The next evening, I watched from across the street as Walter pulled into Mike's lot in his precious Camaro. He was dressed to impress, probably thinking he was about to make some big business deal. While Mike kept him busy in the office, I slipped across the street and got to work. Sugar in the gas tank was an old myth. It doesn't actually damage the engine. But loosening the lug nuts on his wheels, That would definitely get his attention. Not enough to cause an accident, just enough to make the car shake and pull to one side. I also swapped out his expensive racing tires for some bald retreads Mike had lying around. When Walter came out of the office 20 minutes later, I was waiting for him. "Evening, Walter. How's business?" He spun around, his face going pale when he saw me. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Having a conversation. See, I've been doing some research on you, Walter. Interesting stuff. Want to hear what I found?" "I don't have to listen to this." "Oh, but you do, because if you don't, I'm going to start making some phone calls. First to your boss, then to Kayla's boss, then to a few other people who might be interested in your colorful employment history." Walter's hands were shaking as he fumbled for his car keys. "You're bluffing." I pulled out a folder thick with documents. Sexual harassment complaint from Jennifer Walsh at your last job. Embezzlement investigation at the job before that. And my personal favorite, the restraining order from Lisa Chen, who claimed you were following her home from work and leaving gifts on her doorstep. Those were all misunderstandings. Were they? Because I also found out about your little side business, the one where you convince lonely women to invest in your import-export company and then disappear with their money. How much did you take from Mrs. Patterson before she figured out you were scamming her? Walter's face went from pale to gray. Mrs. Patterson was the widow of a factory foreman, a sweet old lady who'd trusted the wrong man with her late husband's life insurance money. Here's how this is going to work," I continued. "You're going to break up with my wife, tonight. You're going to tell her it was all a mistake, that you're not ready for a serious relationship. And you're going to return every piece of furniture you helped her steal from my house. And if I don't, then I make those phone calls. I file a police report about the furniture theft. I contact Mrs. Patterson and help her file charges against you. And I make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you really are." Walter tried to get tough, puffing out his chest and stepping closer to me. "You think you can threaten me? I'm not afraid of some washed-up factory worker." That's when I played my ace. "Did you know that Kayla's been cheating on you too?" The blood drained from his face. "What?" "With her boss, Dave Morrison. Started about 2 weeks after she started sleeping with you. She's been playing both of you, Walter. Using you to get away from me, and using him to climb the ladder at work. Check her phone if you don't believe me." It was a lie, but it was a believable lie. And in that moment, watching Walter's world crumble around him, I realized I'd discovered something about myself. I was good at this, really good. Walter tried to start his car, but the engine sputtered and died. He tried again, and the whole car shook like it was having a seizure. "Having car trouble, Walter? That's a shame. Guess you'll have to call a tow truck." I walked away, leaving him stranded in the parking lot with a broken car and a broken ego. But I wasn't done, not even close. That night, Kayla's boss called her. I'd sent him copies of some very personal emails Kayla had written about the company, including her plans to steal clients when she eventually quit. Nothing illegal, but definitely grounds for suspension pending investigation. And Judy? Well, Judy learned the hard way that making TikTok videos mocking your father isn't so funny when those videos get shared with your school principal and all your friends' parents. By midnight, my phone was buzzing with angry texts from all three of them. Kayla screaming about her job, Walter ranting about his car, Judy crying about being humiliated at school. I turned off my phone and went to bed with a smile on my face. They wanted to destroy my life? Fine, but turnabout is fair play. Mebeld there's about sich of mebel done shit. The community center hadn't seen this much excitement since the high school basketball team made it to regionals 3 years ago. Word had spread through town like wildfire about the mediation meeting between me and Kayla, and half of Henderson seemed to have found excuses to be there. Officially, it was a town council meeting about the proposed new traffic light on Main Street. Unofficially, everyone knew they were about to witness the final round of the Taylor family meltdown. I arrived early and set up in the back row, my laptop bag loaded with enough evidence to destroy 3 reputations. Sharon Martinez sat beside me, and I was grateful for the support. Over the past week, she'd become more than just a friendly coworker. She'd become my ally in ways I was only beginning to understand. "You sure about this, Aaron?" she whispered as people filed in. "Once you do this, there's no going back." There was no going back the moment they decided to steal from me. Kayla made her entrance like she was walking a red carpet, Walter trailing behind her like a kicked dog. He looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, the kind of haunted expression that comes from 3 days of car troubles and sleepless nights. Kayla, on the other hand, had doubled down on the glamour. New outfit, professional makeup, the whole successful businesswoman act. They took seats in the middle section, surrounded by Kayla's real estate friends and a few of Walter's drinking buddies from Murphy's. Judy slouched in beside them, her face buried in her phone, probably trying to pretend this wasn't happening. Mayor Davidson called the meeting to order and droned through the usual municipal business while the real audience waited for the main event. When he finally opened the floor for community concerns, I stood up. I'd like to address some recent events that have affected not just my family, but this entire community. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop in the parking lot. See, we talk a lot in this town about values, about honesty, integrity, standing by your word. But lately, I've learned that some people think those values are just suggestions. I opened my laptop and connected it to the projector system the council used for presentations. The first image that appeared on the wall was a screenshot of Walter's dating profile, the one where he claimed to be a decorated war veteran and successful entrepreneur. This is Walter Anderson. Some of you know him as Kayla's boyfriend. Others might know him from the stories he tells about his military service. Purple Heart recipient, 2 tours in Afghanistan, the whole hero narrative. Walter started to stand up, but I kept talking. Funny thing about military records, they're public information if you know how to look. Walter Anderson never served a day in the military, never been to Afghanistan, never earned a Purple Heart, never did anything more dangerous than sell used cars to single mothers at predatory interest rates. The murmur that went through the crowd was like a wave building momentum. I clicked to the next slide. But that's just the beginning. See, Walter's got quite the employment history. 3 jobs in 5 years, all ending with either harassment complaints or theft investigations. Most recently, he convinced Mrs. Patterson, some of you know her, Bill Patterson's widow, to invest her late husband's life insurance money in a fake import business. Took her for $12,000 before disappearing. Now Walter did stand up, his face red with rage and panic. This is all lies. He's making this up because he can't handle losing his wife. Am I? I clicked to the next slide, showing bank records and police reports. Because I've got documentation for everything, including the restraining order from your last girlfriend, who caught you following her home from work. The crowd was getting restless now, angry murmurs directed at Walter. But I wasn't done. Now, let's talk about my wife, Kayla Taylor. Kayla's confident expression started to crack as I clicked to a new section of slides. Kayla works in real estate, and she's very ambitious. So ambitious, in fact, that she's been planning to steal clients from her current employer and start her own competing business. Here are some emails she sent to potential partners, detailing exactly how she planned to violate her non-compete agreement. You hacked my email, Kayla shouted. Actually, you left your laptop open on the kitchen table. Amazing what people leave lying around when they think their husband is too stupid to pay attention. The next slide showed the security footage from our house. Clear images of the moving truck and Walter directing the theft of my grandmother's furniture. And here's my personal favorite. Video evidence of Kayla and Walter stealing family heirlooms from my house while I was at work. That dresser belonged to my grandmother, passed down through 3 generations. But apparently Kayla thought it would look better in Walter's apartment. The crowd was getting ugly now. These were working-class people who understood the value of family heirlooms and the betrayal of theft. Someone in the back shouted, "Throw them out." But I had one more bomb to drop. Oh, and Walter, remember when I told you Kayla was cheating on you too? I wasn't lying. I clicked to the final slide, showing text messages between Kayla and her boss, Dave Morrison. They weren't romantic, but they were definitely inappropriate. Late-night conversations about private meetings and special projects that had nothing to do with real estate. Walter spun around to stare at Kayla, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. You told me those were just work meetings. They are work meetings, Kayla protested, but her voice cracked. At midnight. In hotel rooms. Come on, Walter. Even you're not that stupid. That's when everything went to hell. Walter lunged at me, but he had to climb over 2 rows of chairs to get there. I sidestepped easily, and he crashed into the folding table where the council kept their water pitcher and glasses. The whole thing went down with a tremendous crash, soaking Walter and sending glass flying everywhere. The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter. Someone started recording with their phone. Walter struggled to his feet, dripping wet and covered in glass, looking like the pathetic con man he'd always been. Kayla tried to rush to his defense, but she was wearing high heels, and the floor was wet. She went down hard, her designer dress riding up, her carefully applied makeup smearing as she hit the ground. "You bastard!" she screamed at me from the floor. "You planned this whole thing." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I planned a lot more than this." I held up the phone so everyone could see the screen. It showed a text message Walter had sent to Kayla just that morning. "Can't wait for you to pay off my car loan with the divorce money. We'll be living good once you clean out that loser." The crowd went absolutely silent for about 3 seconds. Then someone started booing. Within moments, half the room was on their feet, shouting at Walter and Kayla, calling them thieves and con artists. Judy finally looked up from her phone, tears streaming down her face as she realized what her mother and Walter had really been planning. She stared at me with something that might have been respect for the first time in months. "You wanted a real man, Kayla," I said over the noise of the angry crowd. "Real men don't run. They finish what you started." That's when my mother made her entrance. Brenda Taylor was 73 years old, barely 5 feet tall, and tougher than a $2 steak. She walked into that community center like she owned the place, which, in a way, she did. The Taylor family had been in Henderson for 4 generations, and everyone respected Brenda. "Excuse me," she said in a voice that cut through the chaos like a knife. The room went quiet immediately. She walked straight to where Kayla was still sitting on the wet floor, looked down at her with the kind of contempt usually reserved for something you'd scrape off your shoe. "Kayla Marie Taylor, you are not fit to clean my floors, let alone steal from my house. That furniture belongs to the Taylor family, and it's going back where it belongs. Tonight, Mrs. Taylor, I can explain." "No, you can't. Because there's no explanation for what you've done. You've disgraced yourself, you've corrupted my granddaughter, and you've brought shame on a name that meant something in this town." Brenda turned to address the crowd. "The house on Maple Street belongs to me. Always has, always will. I let Kayla live there because she was married to my son. But that arrangement is over. She has until Sunday to remove her personal belongings. Everything else stays." The legal implications hit Kayla like a physical blow. Without the house, her divorce settlement was basically worthless. She'd been counting on getting half of what she thought was Aaron's property, but it had never been his to begin with. Walter, meanwhile, was trying to slink toward the exit, but I wasn't done with him yet. "Leaving so soon, Walter? Don't you want to hear the rest?" I clicked to one final slide, showing a screenshot of Walter's credit report and outstanding warrants. Turns out Walter's got some legal troubles he forgot to mention. 3 outstanding warrants for unpaid child support, 2 bench warrants for failure to appear in court, and a federal tax lien for $47,000. The room erupted again as people realized they'd been watching a con artist operate in their community for months. Walter made a break for the door, but 2 of the actual veterans in the crowd blocked his path. "Hold on there, hero," said Jim Morrison, a Marine who'd actually served in Afghanistan. "I think we need to have a conversation about stolen valor." I walked over to where Kayla was finally getting to her feet, her designer outfit ruined, her makeup streaked with tears. "You know what the funny thing is, Kayla? I really loved you. For 18 years, I thought we were building something together. But you saw me as nothing more than a paycheck and a stepping stone to something better. Aaron, please, save it. You made your choice when you decided to steal from my family. You made your choice when you turned my daughter against me. You made your choice when you brought that con artist into our lives." I pulled out a thick manila envelope and handed it to her. "Divorce papers. I'm not asking for custody anymore. Judy's old enough to decide where she wants to live. I'm not asking for alimony. I'm not even asking you to pay me back for the money you stole. All I want is for you to disappear from my life." Kayla opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanning the papers. Her face went white as she realized what she was reading. This gives you everything." "No, it gives me back what was always mine. The difference is, now I know what it's worth." Sharon stood up and walked over to us, and that's when I dropped the final bombshell. "Oh, and Kayla? I'd like you to meet Sharon Martinez. We've been seeing each other for the past 2 weeks. But she works with you. She's been helping you this whole time." Sharon smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Actually, I've been helping him for a lot longer than 2 weeks. See, Walter and I used to date. About 6 months ago, before he started seeing you. He pulled the same con on me that he pulled on you. The fake military service, the promises about his successful business, the whole routine." Kayla's mouth fell open as the pieces clicked into place. "When I heard he was dating Aaron's wife, I figured it was only a matter of time before Aaron needed some inside information about what kind of man Walter really was. So I started paying attention, keeping records, building a case. You set this whole thing up? We set it up, I corrected. Turns out, when you treat people like garbage, sometimes they work together to take out the trash. The crowd was eating it up, cheering and applauding like they were watching the season finale of their favorite TV show. Walter was being escorted out by the veterans, probably heading for a very uncomfortable conversation in the parking lot. Kayla stood there in her ruined dress, holding divorce papers that would leave her with nothing but her personal belongings and whatever money she had in her own accounts. Judy walked over to me, tears still streaming down her face. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought Mom was telling the truth about everything. Your mother was telling the truth, sweetheart. Her truth. The problem is, there's a difference between what someone believes and what actually happened. Can I come home? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw past the teenage attitude and the makeup and the social media obsession. She was still my little girl, and she'd been manipulated just as much as I had. You never left home, Judy. The door's always been open. As the crowd began to disperse, people came up to shake my hand and pat me on the back. These were my neighbors, my coworkers, people I'd known for years who'd watched Walter operate in their community and hadn't known how to stop him. About time someone put that bastard in his place, said Murphy from the tavern. Your grandmother would be proud, said Mrs. Chen from the grocery store. Always knew you had it in you, Aaron, said Mike Kowalski with a grin. Sharon and I walked out into the cool evening air, leaving Kayla to deal with the aftermath of her choices. In the distance, we could see Walter's Camaro being loaded onto a tow truck. Apparently his car troubles were far from over. So what now? Sharon asked. Now we go home. Judy and I have a lot of talking to do, and I've got some furniture to move back where it belongs. And Kayla? I looked back at the community center, where my soon-to-be ex-wife was sitting alone on the steps, still holding the divorce papers, finally understanding the full cost of her betrayal. Kayla made her bed. Now she gets to lie in it. As we drove away, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the temporary satisfaction of revenge, but the deeper peace that comes from standing up for yourself and protecting what matters. They'd called me cold, weak, a pushover who would never fight back. But they'd learned the truth tonight. In this town, cold iron is the only thing that cuts through lies and betrayal. And I was forged from the coldest iron of all.